Sreeram Chaulia, the Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs, is with me in the studio. Mr. Chaulia, the Prime Minister clearly using BRICS as a platform in India's diplomatic war against Pakistan. How do you see this out, and also what is India essentially hoping for?
Yeah, you're right in the sense that BRICS has been mostly traditionally focused on economic diplomacy and promoting trade and investment and economic development and new financial institutions. So as the host, Prime Minister Modi has a prerogative, he has a convening power to be able to shape the agenda, and India has done that, and we are responding to a regional threat in the form of the terrorism and trying to globalize it and trying to bring in partners from these 5 member countries to be on not just speak in one voice but also act against it. And I think clearly while we can set aside Brazil and South Africa because they are a little away from the epicenter of the terror, Russia and China very much are affected by it, and our diplomacy will be to use the BRICS as one more platform through which we can isolate and marginalize Pakistan, which has been acting beyond the pale of civilized conduct. So I think what Prime Minister is doing is, in a way, reminding BRICS members that security and economics are interconnected. He made a point about how terrorism actually is a threat to economic growth and to revival. Remember, most of the BRICS economies are not doing so well. So what he's trying to say, and there is a connection. For example, if we don't have access through land to Afghanistan, that does hamper our economic growth, and vice versa for Afghanistan. And Pakistan is the one that's been blocking it in SAARC. So these are different means by which he's trying to say that there is a troublemaker in our region, and we need to try and turn it around. And it can only happen if especially Russia and China are on board, because these two have dealings with Pakistan and can apply some pressure on it and can try to make it rethink its old ways of conducting itself.
To Sreeram Chaulia here in the studio, it's significant that the meeting of the National Security Advisors of the BRICS nations took place. Do you see India looking for some specific measures in terms of BRICS nations coming together in some form of security measures on the ground?
Well, sharing of intelligence is the first step, and national security advisors are in charge of the intelligence apparatus of each of these member countries. So the fact that they have all met separately is a welcome step, and I think they should consider innovative new means for countering this menace, which could include, for example, forming joint squads of special operations forces that can react in crises and respond quickly and potentially prevent terrorists from carrying out devastating attacks like the Mumbai attacks of 2009. So I think we need to think innovatively. The Chinese are a problem, as you mentioned, but the Chinese also have a tendency to look at how the others are shaping up in multilateral fora. They tend not to be isolated or to stick out like a sore thumb. So if they are under pressure, wherein all the other 4 member countries are on board, but only the Chinese seem to be wavering, then they kind of adjust, because at the end of the day, the Chinese are very conscious about their image, their reputation, their prestige in the international forum. And unfortunately, both on nuclear proliferation and on terrorism, their record has not been good. So I think I think Prime Minister will try to extract more from the Chinese. Although, of course, the Chinese have their own truck with the Pakistanis, and it's maybe fanciful for us to expect a huge transformation or a change. But certainly, I think through these means, we are putting the ball in the Chinese court and asking them to respond, and that's, I think, proactive diplomacy.
With Sreeram Chaulia, as we look at the BRICS meeting, and of course, as our correspondent was saying, India is really hoping to strengthen BIMSTEC as well, a regional alliance that does not include Pakistan. That's significant. And given the terms of the recent collapse of the SAARC summit, it's in India's interest to ensure that BIMSTEC really comes together.
BIMSTEC outreach is an innovation we are doing. We are combining it with BRICS. Remember 2012 we had hosted a BRICS summit in Delhi. We didn't have any such major regional grouping outreach, but now it's increasingly the trend where we try to connect our neighborhood with the visiting dignitaries from far away. and in the process, it's like a mutual win-win situation. BIMSTEC is an economics-focused organization. It has a couple of Southeast Asian countries, like Thailand and Myanmar are in it, and some of our neighbors whose heads of state are going to be here. Sheikh Hasina is here, the Bhutanese Prime Minister is here, Nepalese Prime Minister is here, and so on. So I think there is a synergy. We are trying to expand east as part of Prime Minister's Act East policy and do connectivity corridors and reach far into Southeast Asia and beyond. And by bringing BRICS and BIMSTEC together, we're also, of course, sending the message that there is something called a SARC-1 process without the Pakistanis who have been unfortunately recalcitrant. And also we are trying to say that we can actually raise the profile of BIMSTEC. The BIMSTEC has been somewhat focused mostly on technical issues until now. But since BRICS itself is now geared towards expanding what we call intra-BRICS trade, which is almost around 300 billion a year these days, and we are aiming at a much faster rate. Nirmala Sitharaman, our Commerce Minister, was saying recently that although it's growing, the trade we do with the rest of the world, BRICS countries, intra-BRICS trade is only 5% of it. So there's a lot that can be done with it.
Yeah.
And bringing in BIMSTEC means that we can connect to ASEAN, which is the Southeast Asian nations.
I'm going to Sreeram Chaulia, do you think that India will be successful in naming Pakistan in the Goa Declaration, or even the term cross-border terror, which, as our correspondent was pointing out, they're trying to push into the Goa Declaration?
I think step by step we are seeing there's global consensus that cross-border terrorism is unacceptable and in contemporary international affairs. So it would be a success for us if we can get that in. Perhaps Pakistan as a country may not be named. That would be like a revolutionary step, and the Chinese would be seen to have betrayed their all-weather ally. But it's interesting that the PM has made the connection between economics and security, because you see the Chinese have committed so-called approximately $46 billion to build the China-Pakistan economic corridor, and there are huge clouds about the viability of this CPEC, as it's called, because of terror. And so in a way, when the PM says that our economic growth is hurt by terrorism, what he's also appealing to is to the Chinese mindset, which is, if you're smart investors and you want to put in such a huge amount of money in that country, which is so unstable, and they have to create a separate security force only to protect the Chinese engineers and workers who will be building all these power stations and power plants across Pakistan. Surely you can use your leverage on the Pakistanis and get them to curb this for your own interests, which is your investments over there. So there are valid reasons why we need to break this connection and try and bring the Chinese on board. But surely, the Chinese have other, they're not only concerned about terrorism or their investments in Pakistan, they also want to contain and hem us in as a South Asian power. And Pakistan always has been that chip that they've used to try and bottle us down. So I think to that extent the Chinese have a geostrategic interest in continuing to play, hunt with the hares and run with the hounds. That's unfortunately been the Chinese playbook over time. I don't think we'll see a big difference, but BRICS is a forum where we will want to apply more pressure on the Chinese.
So Sreeram Chaulia, India's message right now is that economics must go hand in hand with security in the current day and age. And at the BRICS summit, Prime Minister Modi made that extremely clear. Do you think that BIMSTEC, of course, is just as important in this regard, given the regional geopolitics?
Yeah, economics has to be there, because end of the day, BRICS justify themselves, their raison d'etre, by economic reasons. So I think that cannot be sidelined. So terror and economics are in a way like the two items on the table, and both these have to be covered at the Goa summit. And I'm pretty sure, look at the innovative things the BRICS nations have designed. We are now coming up with a new credit rating agency of our own. That's significant. We are trying to trade in our local currencies. That's important. We are trying to also come up with agreements to lower non-tariff barriers and customs, and to also understand the domestic investment priorities in each country, because investment within BRICS has not been phenomenal. Trade has grown. So these are areas that cannot be neglected. At the end of the day, for us to get the monkey off the back that somehow BRICS is declining or failing or no longer relevant, which is the Western pitch, we have to, stand by closely, come together and show a greater unity in the economic realm and greater macroeconomic coordination. The bank, New Development Bank, has taken off the ground. That's a matter of great satisfaction for us. We need to make it, grow. And these are, I think, the main priorities for BRICS, apart from the security situation and, trying to improve it. So end of the day, next summit, we still have a year to go, but between now and then, there's got to be a lot of homework in terms of making, the economic coordination closer and closer.
Dr. Chaulia, what do you make of Narendra Modi's speech?
Yeah, he addressed both the legs that we were mentioning earlier, economics as well as security. And in a way, as the host, as the presidency, one holding the presidency for BRICS, he has highlighted how we need to restructure economies, how we need to get closer. He also mentioned people-to-people relations, which are, in my view, quite significant, although they tend to be ignored. Because, if we have a football tournament of BRICS nations, if we have, cultural exchanges, we have all these youth summits that are going on, academic forum, India has done a great job as the host for this year's summit, and we must acknowledge and put it on the table. The meticulous preparations show that we take this institution very seriously, and Prime Minister highlighted what we want from this, and I think that was important. At the same time, he has been mentioning all through the day that India is perform serious economic reform. This is an opportunity for other BRICS countries. We are taking a lead right now because we can talk with our chins up, because our growth rate is the fastest among all the BRICS countries. And our competitiveness is improving, our openness to doing business is getting better. So all these things I think he addressed pretty well. As far as the terrorism thing goes, I think he has highlighted the National Security Advisor's dialogue, and that's critical. And I think military cooperation, defense cooperation can also expand. Right now we have one-on-one, like with Russia we have, with China we are doing some so-called counter-terrorism exercises which are very small right now. And then similarly with South Africa we have an Indian Ocean region, conclave for security and cooperation. But what this forum brings is Latin America, Africa, Asia and Eurasia all combined in one place. And I think the relevance of this other Chinese President Xi Jinping also mentioned this. We have now an opportunity in 10 years to take stock, to build a BRICS identity, not to fall into the despondency trap, but to come together to work for an equitable world order. These are the big ideals and the values that inspire BRICS in the first place. And, brass tacks cooperation is great, but we must not forget the basic spirit, which is that we must sometimes set aside narrow nationalism and differences in these multilateral forums. What Prime Minister is asking for when he says non-selective approach to terror, and that something that hurts you also hurts me, what he's trying to say is to revive this spirit of plurilateralism or multilateralism, which brings together all the 5 countries on a shared platform.